In this video, I'm going to walk you through kind of how I do a name or a composition and just some tips for flourishing and where to add them and things. So let's jump in. So I have the last page in my workbook. It's page 14. I love to use this as a practice guide. And then I have my Canson marker paper. And then of course I have my ink and my dip pen. And so before I start lettering onto my gift tags with a person's name, I like to kind of do a little sketch here. And so you can do this with your glass dip pen, or you could even do it with a pencil, whatever you prefer. I'm just going to use it with the glass dip pen since I already have it out. So when we're doing a name, the best places to add flourishing are going to be in the workbook. There's this little example. So the best places are going to be a capital letter or the beginning of a word, the ending of a word. Any letter that is an ascender letter or descender letter is going to be a great place to add a little bit of flourishing or extra, loops and curls. So let's just do a couple names. So for me, one of my son's names is Clayton. So if I were to do his name, I would need to do the letter C. So that can be a place where I can just go like this. And then this is my process as I write a word, a phrase, or a composition. I don't finish any of the flourishing, the descending loops, ascending loops until the end, if they're like the extra ones that have flourishes. So for Clayton, I would just write it like we've practiced, but on this Y, I'm going to leave it like this, and I'm going to do my T. I'm also not going to cross the T, and I'm kind of just going to leave my N like that. So when you're adding flourishing, you want to think about the north, south, east, west concept. So if you add flourishing to this side, you're going to want to add it to this side. If you add it to the top, you're going to want it to add it to the bottom. So for example, for his name, I could take my C and I could do something like this to kind of finish off the look of that C. If I add something over here, I'm going to need to add something to my N. So I could do something like that. For the Y, if I'm going to add a fun loop like this, for my T, I'm going to need to add something up here too. So you can see that it looks more balanced now. If I didn't have the Y and I just did the T, it would look top heavy. So you just want to pay attention to that as you're going through about where you can add flourishing, where it makes sense. In our workshop, we had a couple names that were actually really great examples that I wanted to show you. So one was the name Irma. So sometimes we have names that are really short, or when we're writing them, there's not really an ascending loop or descending loop. There doesn't really seem. So in the workshop, we had this name as an example. So Irma is one of our members, and it was a really great example. So I wanted to show it here again. But sometimes we'll have names where there's not really a descending loop or an ascending loop. So it's like, where can we add the flourishing here? So sometimes what I'll do, and it also, when names are really short, like Ian or something, that's also where this kind of applies. So for the letter I, we've kind of already got a little flourish going on here, and we've got our R, but what we could do with our M is instead of connecting it to the A, we could bring it down and do a little loop, and then at our A, and maybe loop it up a little bit more. So that's something you can do as well, is you can break this, instead of connecting it, you could bring it down and loop it. So you could do that on an M, an N, or this R, but sometimes that's a good option when you want to add a little flourish and you're not sure where. Another idea, if we finish off this A a little bit more, have that come up, we could just add something here like this, where we kind of underline it. And there's a few examples of those type of things in the workbook on page 9, these different flourishes that you could just add. So that's something you can do too. You can just add it on the bottom there. So I know this is short, but I hope it just gives you some general ideas. I will say flourishing did take me a long time to kind of figure out, and I still feel like I'm not always the best at it. But once you figure out something that works, like for this Y, we could just do a Y that's really loopy like this. But also what I did is I just kind of came in and then up, or the same thing, we could do a little loop and then up. And so that's something that I know works because I've done it so many times. So I know that's going to work on a Y. That's also going to work on a J. That's also going to work on a G. All of those things. So that's something that once you kind of figure out like, oh, I like crossing my T this way, then it's kind of like in your toolkit to know like, okay, I know I can cross my T that way. I could cross my T just like this. I could do more looping or something. Like there's a lot you can play with. And so a lot of it is experimentation and just having fun with it. So let me know if you have any questions specific to composition and flourishing, or if there's any specific names that you'd like to see.